Hello, welcome to another episode of Field of Screams podcast. Today we will be covering Wes Craven's New Nightmare. Yes, Wes Craven is back. Thank the Lord, thank God, thank everything. Because after Freddy's dead, we needed something different. Wes Craven knew it. Wes Craven watched the sequels, was not happy, and after Freddy's dead, we needed something to just turn the car around, change the direction we were heading, buy a new boat, get on a different airplane, call a new taxi. We needed something different. Now, the last time I've seen this movie, I was actually a teenager. I went to rewatch it. I recalled liking it as a teenager, and I recalled it being meta. But man, oh man. Like, this was Wes Craven before he made Scream, and you can tell, like, the dude was onto something. The dude was ahead of his time making this film. Let's just start talking about it. Let's talk about the beginning of this movie. So the beginning of this movie, it's close-ups of Freddy's, like, brand new glove. It's like a mechanical hand that has the knives, just like part one. And we find out we are on set of another Nightmare on Elm Street movie they are making. Wes Craven is on set, thank God. Just seeing Wes Craven, it's like a little comfort, a little warmth to me, just after watching Freddy's Dead. If I sounded like in the last review that I sounded like I was dead inside, I kind of felt that. That was a really tough movie to review, and going back to a more serious movie, I really enjoyed watching this, I really did. I felt the energy pick back up. I'm glad he's back. But yeah, they're back on set. And this mechanical hand, like, it goes crazy. It kills two, like, tech guys. I think one's name was Chuck. I'm forgetting the other one. But, like, it literally just uses this little knife fingernails and kills them right away. And it goes for Heather Langenkamp's husband. And she screams and she wakes up. It was a nightmare. And there is an earthquake going on. Like, this movie picks up right away. And just this 3 minutes that we've seen in the new Nightmare is better than anything we watched in Freddy's Dead. So I'm happy. Heather and her husband Chase, they go downstairs, they find their son Dylan. They go to protect him, and once the earthquake's over, they look over, and Chase has a cut on his finger, just like it happened in Heather's dream. You know, one of the mechanical hands, it sliced Chase's finger open, and when she wakes up, Chase's finger's bleeding all over the place, all over Dylan's bed. You know, Heather's a little angry that she has to do laundry later, just kidding. But yeah, you know, it's kind of that weird coincidence that Heather is well familiar with doing the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And again, this movie is very, very meta. You know, we are not saying Nancy, at least not yet. We are saying Heather, because Heather is playing herself. And we see this a lot in this movie. Another cool thing is, during the shoot of this movie, an actual earthquake happened, which is pretty eerie, because, you know, this whole movie is based upon what they were shooting before what they filmed actually comes to life and haunts the actors and, you know, the director, and it's an actual curse. So for them to make a meta movie about whatever they're filming is actually happening in real life, and then an earthquake happens, which in the script of this movie, an earthquake happens, and they were actually able to use that footage for the movie itself, is really quite eerie. I bet Wes Craven was kind of like, oh man, like, I hope I'm not actually doing this for real. You know, he's like looking around the room all nervous. But yeah, crazy coincidence. Chase does end up having to leave for work, and as he leaves, Heather, I almost said Nancy, Heather pinches him on the butt, and she's like, ha ha, you know, like flirting with her husband. It's cool we get to see actual Heather. But as soon as he leaves out the door, probably one of the worst effects of this movie, and I'm being nitpicky here, like another tremor happens, and it makes like 4 cracks in the wall, which looks like Freddy's, you know, slice marks. And she's kind of like, oh, you know, I don't know about this. Like, you can tell it's getting a little bit in her head right from the get-go. To make matters worse, Dylan keeps putting the first Nightmare on Elm Street movie on their TV, and she has to go over and she turns it off, and when she turns it off, Dylan just screams like, ah! And she's like trying to be a good parent and to get him to stop. And if anyone has a kid, you know, when your kid has a meltdown, like, it's just kind of the most awkward thing to kind of deal with, because you don't want to be a really mean parent, but when your kid is just being completely, if your kid's having a meltdown, sometimes you got to put your foot down because you don't want that to happen a lot. You don't want to go in grocery stores and your kid screaming at the top of their lungs because they're not getting their way. You want to put that down. But you also don't want to be a mean parent. So you're kind of like, oh, poor Heather. Like, her kid screaming his head off when she turns off her scary movie that he probably shouldn't be watching. Heather's babysitter, Julie, comes through the door like around this time, and poor Julie, she's probably going up the stairs like, oh, I hope Dylan's in a great mood, and she probably heard the screaming through the door, and if I was her, I'd probably be taking like really small steps, like, okay, Heather, put out this fire, like, I don't want to deal with this. But Julie is a great babysitter in this movie. She's a very likable character. You like Julie. She really cares about Dylan. She probably wasn't taking the small steps, like I said, because she's a good babysitter, and she seems like a girl with a great heart. That felt weird saying, but you know what I mean. She's a nice girl. Another thing I kind of liked about this movie, Heather does get into the limousine because she's going to go onto a talk show, and the limo driver recognizes her, which, by the way, Heather's been getting these calls from this harasser that's acting like Freddy, saying all these weird things. So you can tell Heather is just stressed. She's probably pinpointing these dreams that, she's just stressing about these interviews that she's doing and stuff. But the limo driver's like, oh, you're from Nightmare on Elm Street. The first is the best. Which is an opinion a lot of people have. She probably hears it a lot. But I'm guessing this is just Wes Craven kind of poking a little fun since he's back at the throne. It would have made me laugh if Heather was like, well, actually, Dream Warriors is my favorite. And then she looks at the camera like, mm-hmm. But no, that doesn't happen. Well, we know she's not going to say Freddy's Dead. Wouldn't that be something? If Heather just looked and actually Freddy's Dead is my favorite. And then her eyes turn red and the camera starts to shake. And it just turns into a really weird psychotic scene. Thank God that didn't happen. One more take. What if, while they're driving, he says that little line and Heather's like, yeah, the first one's the best. And then Roseanne flies at the limo and her head goes through a window and she's like, Freddy's Dead's the best. And they're fighting Roseanne away from the limo. I'm going way too far with this. We're spending 5 minutes on the limo scene, which took 2 seconds of the movie. So we got to move on. I'm sorry. We keep getting these really meta moments. And I misspoke earlier. I said Heather was going to the talk show. She's actually going to talk to Sarah Risher, who is a producer on the former Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And then we get glimpses of Robert Englund. He's on the talk show. And he's quoting classic Freddy lines. If you are a big Nightmare on Elm Street fan, this whole beginning session is just your wet dream. It's great. Freddy's running around you are all my children now. And it's just great. It makes you smile. They are having fun in this beginning part of the movie. We also get a little bit with Bob Shea. Bob Shea is in this movie. He's trying to pitch Heather to join this movie. He's like, come on, Heather. Kids love horror movies. And Heather doesn't want to because she's getting harassed. Her kid's being weird. And she finds out a little tidbit that her husband's been secretly working on the brand new Nightmare on Elm Street movie. So Heather's like, I need to think about it. She goes home. Dylan's being weird again. He's literally talking like Daffy Duck. I can't do Daffy Duck. I can't. Or Donald the Duck. I don't know. I'm confusing my ducks, but the voice just isn't good. I wish they went more of The Shining. He has a little weird voice, Red Rum. And it's weird in that aspect, but at least it's not like a duck. This one, I'm kind of they should have had the kid do a different voice. I don't like his voice, but again, I'm being nitpicky, because so far this movie's been fantastic. Dylan has a little toy named Rex, or Rexy. It protects Dylan from all the little demons that try to get him, the little boogeymen. But we know, Freddy's kind of messing with them, the demon entity, Freddy. Whenever I say Freddy, I'm talking about a demon that is feeding off the energy off of the movies they have made, and the movies have kept them at bay. until now, because they've quit making these Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So now a demon is like going out to get the actors and actresses and the director and all of them. Like the story is kind of hokey, to say the least. But I mean, it's just such a meta movie, and it's the only way like this would have worked. Like I really don't know how you would have made this story more believable and not really outlandish. But I mean, I'm willing to overlook it. I really am, especially after watching the last movie we did. So yeah. So he's got this little dinosaur Rex or Rexy. It protects him from Freddy. And it reminds me of kind of like a Dream Warriors-esque, like that's his little power that Dylan can do. When Chase is heading home, we get another kill scene. The two guys that were killed in the beginning of the movie, they didn't show up to work. That's weird. But Chase is driving home, and we see like Freddy's glove like come out of the seat of his car and literally go right for his jewels. And like during that scene, I'm like, oh no, like don't do that. And luckily Freddy's like, nah, I'm not a douchebag. I'm not gonna destroy his balls. I'll just claw at his chest. And he claws his chest. Chase, Rex, he dies. Heather sees it in her dream, and she gets a call because Chase just died. What's nice about this movie is, after Chase dies, like if this was Dream Child or Freddy's dead, after Chase would have died, Nancy would have found... Nancy, yeah, I guess. Let's just pretend it's Nancy. Nancy would have found out, and they just would have, like, blew it completely. No one would have paid attention to Chase's death, but here Heather goes to the coroner, and she sees him, and she's like, oh, I need to see his chest. And the coroner's like, okay, that's weird and a little kinky, but I guess we can do it. It's a little messy, though. And when he shows her that Chase, died via the chest, she like throws up. She's legitly upset. And you feel there's like more at stake in this movie than there has been in the past couple. The past couple, someone dies and they're like, oh, that sucks. So what are we doing tonight? Things have been weird. Maybe we should go investigate. And like characters like don't care. But here, like there is more at stake here. It is more, I guess, realistic, I would say. At Chase's funeral, we see a lot of actors and actresses from the past movies. Tuesday Night is there, the actress, not the day and time, but the actress Tuesday Night is there. We also get like some actors from like Freddy's Dead, and I think some from Part 5. And it's just, again, very meta. It's cool that they're there, and it would make sense that they're there because maybe they've worked with Nancy or have talked to her and cut some capacity. Nightmare on Elm Street cast and crew all stick together, maybe. I don't know. Roseanne wasn't there, unfortunately. I'm going to keep doing these Freddy's Dead jokes. I'm just happy we moved on from them. I'm so sorry. I'm going on tangents. But during this funeral scene, like an earthquake happens. Chase's casket tips over. Nancy. Heather runs over, and she sees the demon Freddy pulling Dylan into like the casket, into like a tunnel. She goes down into the casket to like help Dylan. Her husband like comes alive, and it turns out to like be like a dream type state, like she was just seeing it. And John Saxon, he's in this. He helps her out, and he's like, "Whoa, Heather, take it easy." And it turns out that Heather Langenkamp and John Saxon are good friends in real life, according to this movie. I hope that's true in actual real life. But they played out in this movie like they are actually pretty close. And if you're just tuning into this podcast and haven't listened to the past ones and haven't seen the movies, that John Saxon is Nancy's dad in the original one and in Part 3. So it's cool that when Heather returns for this one, John Saxon returns as well. Like it's like they're a duo in each of the movies they return in. It's pretty cool. Dylan keeps doing weird things, and Heather starts drinking coffee and she's going to sleep. Cool tiebacks to the first one. Eventually, her and John Saxon, they go to a little playground down at the park. Dylan's out there playing, they're talking, trying to figure out what's going on. And there comes a point to where Dylan climbs up on the tallest piece of equipment and stands on the very tippy top of it. If he jumps, he's probably going to either be very hurt or he's going to be dead. And as he's standing on top, they're playing this, really dramatic music, almost like Godzilla type music. But eventually, he jumps or falls, and Heather runs over, and she makes the best catch to save Dylan's life. The Chicago Bears were probably calling her up, trying to get her to play receiver for him, because their offense is notoriously bad. Things continue to get weird. The script that's going to be pitched by Wes Craven himself, literally these events that are happening to Heather, they happen in his script. And she kind of finds that out as she's getting calls from him, and she talks to Robert Englund, who's painting Freddy Krueger, but a demon version of him. Dylan's acting completely nutty. He's putting on knives on his fingers and taking swipes at her. He's throwing up left and right. She has it rough. Heather's waking up to nightmares, and she's tumbling out of bed, knocking over her nightstand. You can tell this is getting to her. We are pushing to her wit's end. Eventually, Heather takes Dylan to the hospital, which one of the nurses is Lynn Shay. Another cool callback. While she does that, she goes to visit Wes Craven, who gives her this big pitch, him telling her about all those movies kept the demon at bay, but now he's got to do one final movie to get rid of this demon Freddy. And he tells her that she needs to play Nancy one last time in real life. If I was Heather, I'd be like, okay, so can you write in this script that I have a magic ray gun or a magic sword, or, just let me go Dream Warriors on them. Help me assemble the Avengers to where it's not only me. Come on, Wes, throw me a bone. But she doesn't. She's just okay. Eventually, when she goes to the hospital, she sees their babysitter, Julie, which, bless her heart, she had a nightmare that Dylan wasn't okay, so she had to go check up on him. And I was like, this is the babysitter of the year right here. Good for Julie. But unfortunately, it helps her reach her demise also, so we'll get to that. There's a couple other interesting scenes. Demon Freddy does attack Heather when she's at home, and it's really well. They play with the shadows really good. And I think his only words were, "You missed me." It's just mischievous enough to be dark, and he seems angry, but it's not like comedic Freddy, who, would have been like, oh, back again, if it was Freddy's dead. But then we get a scene where, Dylan, it was a nightmare. He throws up all over Heather. It's really gross. And the head nurse, who's been giving Heather crap, she acts like Freddy, and she's going to, cut him open. But that turns out to be a dream. But what's real is the head nurse is, trying to get Heather out of the room because she thinks she's unwell. She even criticizes her parenting for letting Dylan watch the movies. And at that point, Heather's just listen, everyone knows Freddy. He's like Santa Claus or King Kong. Little kids watch Freddy. And that's pretty true. I've seen little kids walk around with Pennywise shirts or Freddy Krueger shirts. This isn't exactly, taboo stuff. Freddy Krueger's pretty mainstream. I mean, especially during this time, let's be honest. When this movie came out, Freddy's a big deal. Still is, but especially during this time. But we finally get to Julie's kill, which is the gnarliest kill we've gotten in this series, and I don't know how long. It's kind of like a replay on the kill in the first movie with the rotating room. Demon Freddy drags her up a wall across the ceiling, but this time we see Freddy doing it. There's times where we see her just going up the wall by herself, but then we get Freddy literally walking up a wall, dragging her. Blood's going everywhere. Poor Dylan's the only one who sees it. And man, the kill is just brutal. And it happens to such a good character. It happens to the best babysitter ever. But man, what a great kill. Then in the midst of all this chaos, Dylan starts going across the highway. Because apparently, that's where they live. They live, right down the road. I mean, Dylan wanted Rexy, and Heather's oh, our house is, right across the highway. And it's man, go get him that dinosaur. As if things weren't crazy enough, and your son's acting bonkers. Just get him his little stuffed toy. But she doesn't. So Dylan, goes on his own with the help of Freddy. Freddy's, picking him up in the clouds over cars. Heather's running across the highway. She literally ducks underneath the semi. It looked pretty cool. It still stands well. She gets hit by a car. But I mean, like, she's still chugging. Like, she is a mother looking for her son. And it makes you wonder what that driver just thinks. Like, did I just hit Heather Langenkamp? Oh my God. I mean, that's a Facebook status if you're going to make one. You know, it's not your fault, right? I don't know. Maybe it's not a good Facebook status. That could really screw you over when it comes to if you have to go to court. I'm going way off tangent. But anyways, like this highway scene, like just really great, really tense. She's following them. Dylan's turning around. There's like an army of Freddys running over to the highway. And it's not cheesy. Like this scene is bonkers, but in a great way. Not bonkers as in Freddy's dead bonkers. Like bonkers as in fantastic bonkers. Then this gets even crazier because when they get home, John Saxon is there, and he's there to help Heather. And he's like, listen, Nancy, you gotta listen. And he keeps calling her Nancy. Like, he is playing his role. He's dressed up as a sheriff. Like, he is dressed up as his part from part 1 and part 3. I guess maybe not part 3, because he was just like a drunk in that one. But, I mean, like, he is like the sheriff. I think he had a sheriff's car. And he keeps calling her Nancy. There's even a part where she's like, why do you keep calling me Nancy? And he stares right at her and goes, why do you keep calling me John? And then, like, eventually she, like, gives in. She's like, fine, I'll play Nancy. And there's a part where, like, he leaves and he's like, I love you, Nancy. And she's like, I love you too, Daddy. And she turns around back to her house, and it is the Nightmare on Elm Street house. You know, the famous one that we keep seeing in every movie. And by this point, I'm, like, fist pumping. I'm like, let's go! Like, the final conflict. Like, this is what Halloween Ends didn't give to us. So Nancy, I'll call her Nancy now. Nancy, like, goes in. Freddy took Dylan into his lair. And, like, it's very Hansel and Gretel themed. She reads Hansel and Gretel to Dylan earlier in the movie. She takes, like, one of his sleeping pills, goes down into, like, this blanket fort, and goes down this slide, and goes into Demon Freddy's, like, Greek underground layer, and has this big confrontation, which is just fantastic. Like, there's a part, I mean, Freddy keeps chasing around Dylan, but then, like, Heather gets in his way. Nancy gets in his way, and, like, his tongue, like, stretches out and, like, wraps around her face, and, like, Dylan comes over with a knife and helps her out. And I guess Heather Langenkamp said, like, that was the worst scene she ever had to film for Nightmare on Elm Street, is that tongue scene. Because it was just hard to breathe, it was uncomfortable. I think a few people on set were making jokes. There's snakes and eels everywhere, and there's a part where Freddy gets Nancy's face real close to him, and he's like, pick a pet for your son, bitch. And it's just like a callback to, like, Freddy's, like, little wittiness, but, like, he just sounds extremely angry as he delivers it. It's almost as if he's heard all the criticism from Freddy's Dead, and he has a lot of anger built up, so now he's releasing it in this new movie. It's great. You know, some people find this part, like, a little weird, especially, like, the Greek decorations of it all. I'm all for it. Like, I was on board by this part. Eventually they get Freddy trapped in the oven, and the fire turns on, and this is what kills the Freddy demon. His face literally, like, turns into, like, a devil. His eyes bulge out. It looks super gnarly and gross. Heather Langenkamp and her son Dylan, they now escape this to where, you know, they can live their typical lives without this demon. And it's kind of weird because the first thing they do is Heather... There's the screenplay written by Wes Craven. It's finally finished once they exit. And he has, like, a little note. He's like, thank you so much for being Nancy one last time. And she, like, takes it and she reads it to Dylan as they sit on the floor after just escaping the Dylan. Or, oh my gosh. After they just escaped the demon, not escaping the Dylan. And, you know, part of me is like, man, if I was a kid, I'd be so traumatized. I would not want to be read this story, and then in this story my dad dies. Like, why are you reading this to him, Heather? But regardless, like, it's just a little funny bit at the end. But I mean, all in all, like, I'm just gonna say it. You know, I say every time I cover a franchise, there's a movie that surpasses what my memory recollects. And I thought it was going to be Dream Child in this one. I was like, oh, I bet I'm kind of just down in that one a little hard. But I think it's definitely this one. And I don't know if it's because I'm just coming off Freddy's Dead, so my bar was set so low, and now I'm watching this, and I feel like I'm watching peak cinema here. But I mean, I recall this movie being good, and if I would have had to rank it, I would have said it's like slightly above average, but now it's gone like way up for me. I am on the new Nightmare train. I really enjoyed watching this movie, and I was really excited to do this review because I'm like, man, like I felt dead when I was doing the Freddy's Dead review, and now I'll do this one. So man, that really enjoyed it. I really did. So I mean, and I hope that you enjoyed this review. If you're still here, feel free to give it a like. It helps it get out to other people. Subscribe if you want to hear more reviews from me so you know when they come out. And again, like if you haven't watched this in a while, it is worth a watch. It definitely is. So if you're questioning it, put that baby in. You'll enjoy it. Well, guys, until next time, we got the reboot next. Let's get it.